All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about interpreting data here. And this is the graph that we created from the length of the bat and looking at the length of the bat wings. And remember, the idea of creating that was creating the graph was to see if you could predict the length of the bat's wingspan based on the length of the bat. And when we plotted the points, I asked you to tell me what picture that the points make. And if you look at the points, I'm not talking about a picture like a bat makes a picture. I'm talking about a trend that you would see happening with the points. And it doesn't all happen exactly proportionately. But, for example, you can see that the length bat that was 3 inches, the wingspan was 10. But also the bat whose length was 3.5 inches also had the wingspan of 10. So it doesn't happen exactly proportionately, but there is something happening, and many of you were able to figure out that when the length of the bat increased, so for example, this bat's length is 3, this bat's length is 5, the length of the wingspan increased. So if you look at the 3-inch bat had a wingspan of 10, the 5-inch bat had a wingspan of 14. So, and each one it was increasing. That would look different if the dots were kind of all over the place. You know, if they were here, 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 and here, you wouldn't necessarily see that there was something specific happening. But in this case, there is, and that's a lot of times why we plot points on a graph, is to see if there's a trend that appears. Sometimes a graph will show a trend with the numbers going up. For example, this one, if you look at this line, it starts here, but then it goes steadily up. And kind of like I said before, not all graphs, all data goes up or down proportionately. And you can see this one kind of starts out gradual, 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 and then somewhere along here it starts to go up, and then by here it's really going up at a much greater rate. To look at what this graph means a little bit more, you look at the title and the labels. So the title here is Visitors by Last Date. So we're talking about visitors. And then we look at this X, and we're looking at days. So days ago. So this was 1, 9, 17. So you kind of get an idea as well for how that is scaled. Then we look at the y-axis, and it says unique visitors. And so it starts out here with about 10,000, and this goes up by 10,000s all the way up to 60,000. So if we look here, we can see from days 1 really through 57 here, they were at about 10,000 visitors, slowly but surely increasing, but kind of at about that amount. And then we look after day 57, and we're here in the 20,000 range for about that amount of time, from 57 to 73. Then after 73, it jumped up quite a bit, 10,000 in this short range. And then it jumped up even higher, quicker and quicker. So something was going on where maybe the word got out and more people came and visited. So maybe it took some time for that word to get out. And so then what you do is you look and you see what's happening and you ask yourself questions. Well, what happened from here to here to make that the difference? What happened from here to here? What happened from here to here? And then why all of a sudden did it go up like that? So you start asking questions and then you can start looking and trying to figure things out. Okay, so this is another graph, and again, if we look at the title, that's the first thing to do is look at the title, number of tadpoles in a pond, and the y-axis is the year, and I'm sorry, the x-axis is the year, and the y-axis is the number of tadpoles. So you can see this is happening over time. So there are a couple of interesting things that happen in this graph that are of note. And if we look at tadpoles, each increment here is 400. Okay, and then if we look at the years, it's going by 1 year. So that's another thing to keep in mind when you are analyzing the graph, is to look at how it's scaled. So this starts in year 1990, and it looks like there were about 200 tadpoles here. And then in 91, it went up to 800, so that's a significant amount of tadpoles. And then in 1992, all the way up here. So you can see, and if we think back at the chart that we just looked at, there's a steady growth in amount of tadpoles. And then you might ask yourself the question, I wonder why that is, and look at the environment to try to figure that out. But then all of a sudden, between 1992 and 1993, there's a drastic decrease in the amount of tadpoles. All the way up here to almost 1,600, all the way back down to about 300. So that's, I mean, just in that short span, all that gain was suddenly lost. And then if you look at the way this story continues to go, after 1993, there's a slow increase in the amount of tadpoles, and then a slow decrease in the amount of tadpoles. So you might, oops, I didn't mean to do that. You might look at this and wonder what was going on. But really this picture that is being painted here is not of tadpoles, but it's of what's happening, and I call this kind of a spike in what's happening here, where there's a sharp increase, a sharp decrease, and then you can see there's a steady increase to a steady decrease. And you can look at factors to try to figure out why. Okay, so if we look at this chart, you can see that there is this pattern here that seems to happen over and over and over again. So if I could get this back. So you can see it goes up and down, up and down, up and down. So this tends to happen over and over again, while at the same time there's kind of, if we're able to draw a line kind of right straight through the middle, it is still slowly increasing, but it goes up and then down and up and then down, and so that's a pattern that's happening over and over again. And again, you can look at the data and make think about why that might be happening. Okay, so what I would like you to do is look at this chart right here and talk about what it's telling you in this chart. Remember to talk about the title. What do the axes tell you? What does the x-axis and the y-axis tell you? And what is happening with this information? What can you learn about it? Okay, so I would pause this, start by talking about what you see in the graph, and then tell me what trend is happening, and see if you can predict what's going to happen in the year 2008. Of course, that's in the past now, but according to this chart, if this were if this were continued out, what would happen then?